Those of you who are fans of the blues should know exactly where I am here. This is the grave of the one, the only Mr. Robert Johnson. Well, to be fair, there are 3 cenotaphs in and around parts of this area. We're outside of Greenwood, which is just back behind the camera over here. Not very far. There's a little place here called Money Road, and there's a church over here, the Little Zion Missionary Baptist Church, which maintains this here through the help of a blues society that's around here as well. But there are several different stones in and around the area that mark the supposed burial ground of Robert Johnson. But this one in particular is the one that just about every historian agrees he's actually buried in this little cemetery. This is what we know. Back in 2000, about 20 years ago, there was an interview that was given by a lady who was the daughter of the gravedigger, and they said that when Johnson died that night, he was playing a club back in Greenwood, and he had, of course, the story goes, that he was given a bottle of whiskey that, was poisoned. And after about 3 days of suffering horribly, he died. Well, they couldn't just bury him anywhere, so they were brought here. They brought him here that night that he'd passed away, here amongst where the rest of the other folks in this cemetery are buried. And a lot of that had to do with the racial divisions that were going on at the time. So he was buried somewhere. Now, according to the daughter of the gravedigger, he was buried somewhere underneath this tree. And this doesn't exactly mark the exact spot of his burial, of course, but this is this is it. This is a good monument as to what it is. And having said that, it's kind of a weird, desolate, quiet little place, and it's, I guess, sort of fitting in a way for a blues guy that had all some sorts of legend and things that are surrounding him, and the myth, the magic that came with it. And this is a guy whose music, unbeknownst to him, would turn out to be the genesis of all rock and roll and country, and really the formulation of the blues as we know it today. Those that have seen the photographs of this and may not have noticed it, that's his handwriting taken. It was of course carved into this granite piece here. But it says in there, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of Jerusalem, I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he will call me from the grave." That's what it says right there. May 8th, 1911 was his birth, thereabouts. His death, August 16, 1938. It's the first member of the 27 Club. How about that? But yeah, this is an interesting, peaceful little spot, and here it is. But we're not entirely done here yet, because there'll be some other business that needs to be attended to before I leave here. There are so many stories and theories and myths and legends and God what knows about the whole death and life of Robert Johnson. We're fairly certain that, it's been fairly well proven that his body lies here at the Little Zion Missionary Baptist Church here in Greenwood, Mississippi. LaFleur County, if you want to get down to it. And all this came from a death certificate that was unearthed in 1968 and said that he was buried at a Zion church. At the time, there were 3 Zion churches in this county, and it ultimately came to be proven that it was here. There's so much data and so much stuff on this that you can read all about it all you want to on the web. There's a ton of it out there, and some of it is conjecture, some of it is proven to be somewhat true, and this one seems to fall into that latter category. Getting here is not all that difficult, quite frankly. Just tell your GPS you're looking for Greenwood, Mississippi, and when you get here, take a look at the town. It's a gorgeous little burg in this part of the Delta right here. Just a fantastic area. Great things to see and do right here on the banks of the Yazoo River, which is really where this is. The Yazoo River being right here, not too terribly far, just a quick stone's throw from the gravesite itself. But more specifically, you can find the Little Zion MB Church just off of Money Road, just north of the town of Greenwood. It's not that hard to find, really, once you get to it. It seems sort of tricky, but it's out here in the midst of some cotton fields and bean fields and things like that. So right here, just follow along the river, and you'll finally fall right into it. An amusing thing about this little church, too, is as gorgeous as it is they only meet once a month, as the sign would indicate, but the choir gets together at least twice, so there's always that for them. At the time of Johnson's death, 1938, the world was a much different place. Legend has it that when he had finally succumbed to the poisoning of the whiskey some 3 days after he had taken it while playing a show here in Greenwood, they couldn't just stick him anywhere, and getting him back to his home, that could prove to be a bit difficult. So it was decided that he'd be buried here at the Little Zion Church. Now, why here? Well, at the time, as I mentioned, the world was a much different place. Well, you just couldn't throw him in any cemetery, now could you? There would be all sorts of weirdness and difficulties with the days and times of what it was. Black people buried here, white people buried there. Well, there came a spot available for him here at Little Zion, and so here he came. And this, as we know, is fairly well true spot to be where his final resting place is located. This tree right here is the one that he was said to be buried under. Now, the point is exactly where, we'll never really know. But the headstone is probably a pretty good indication of just how close his remains finally are. If you do make the journey out here, I recommend that you stop by this black box located just to the side of the headstone here and drop a couple of bucks in there. It's supposed to help keep this area clean. As you can see, it needs a little work. Maybe there's not enough money in there. I don't know. We did a little bit ourselves, hopefully to further the project along a little bit better. But nevertheless, if you do come, remember it is a cemetery treated with the respect that you normally would. And remember, it is a historical monument to the king of the Delta Blues. His remains, we know for, about as factual as we're going to get in 2020, is buried right here. I told you there was a little bit of business I needed to take care of when we got back over here, and I know in modern convention it would probably seem sort of not necessarily sacrilege, aside from the fact that we're on the grounds of an actual church here, but I think we have to make an exception here because of this guy. So I figured, as much as I've been a fan of his music, at least I could do is, have a drink with the man, don't you think? He's around here somewhere and they probably would have enjoyed it. So here's to you, Robert Johnson. The King of the Blues. You can learn more. You can find it all at radio-memphis.com. That's where you find me 5 days a week, plus on Sundays, 8 to 11 p.m. Central Time for the Booze and the Blues. Hopefully we'll get things back on schedule for all of that once we get past this COVID-19 business. But in the meantime, at least I wanted to share this with you. Y'all be safe and keep listening to the blues.